By trying to manage every single detail of my life, she stopped being my wife, and she became my mother. And that's the day the spark died forever. In the world of engineering, there's a concept called over-engineering. It's when you add so many safety features, so many redundant systems, and so much control to a structure that it eventually loses its original purpose. It becomes rigid, heavy, and eventually, it collapses under the weight of its own protection. My marriage to Sarah was a masterpiece of over-engineering. She didn't destroy our life with a scandal or a betrayal. She destroyed it with kindness. She destroyed it by trying to save me from myself, until there was nothing left of the man she had originally fallen in love with. When I first met Sarah, I loved her organization. I'm a creative, a landscape architect. My mind is often in the clouds, thinking about aesthetics, flow, and the natural beauty of a garden. Sarah was a project manager. She was sharp, precise, and had a plan for everything. In the beginning, it felt like a superpower. She helped me organize my taxes, she reminded me of my mother's birthday, and she made sure I didn't forget my keys. I felt taken care of. I felt seen, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, the care turned into management. The management turned into parenting, and the parenting turned into a slow-acting poison that killed our intimacy before I even realized what was happening. It started with the small things. The benevolent corrections. I'd be getting ready for a client meeting, feeling confident in a navy blazer I had picked out. Sarah would walk into the room, look me up and down with a slight frown, and say, "Sweetie, not that one. It makes you look washed out. Wear the charcoal gray one I laid out on the bed for you. And change your socks, those don't match the belt." At first, I'd just shrug and do it. I thought, she has a better eye for fashion than I do. She's just trying to help me succeed. I didn't realize that every time I let her pick my clothes, I was handing over a small piece of my autonomy. I was becoming a doll she was dressing for a play. Then came the schedule. I'd come home after a 10-hour day on a construction site, covered in dirt and exhausted, wanting nothing more than to sit on the porch with a cold beer and watch the sunset. But Sarah would already be standing there with her iPad. "Julian, you have 30 minutes to shower. We're meeting the Millers for dinner at 7. I've already picked the restaurant. They have that low-carb menu you need to stay on. Also, I booked your dentist appointment for tomorrow at 8 a.m., so don't stay up too late." I'd feel a flare of irritation, but then I'd look at her face, so earnest, so helpful, and I'd swallow it. "Thanks, Sarah," I'd say, feeling the beer I didn't get to drink turn bitter in my mind. "You've thought of everything. I just want your life to be easier, honey," she'd say, patting my cheek like I was a toddler who had just finished his vegetables. That was the phrase that haunted our marriage. "I just want your life to be easier." By making my life easier, she was making me redundant in my own existence. She took over the finances because I was too messy with receipts. She took over the grocery shopping because I bought too much junk. She even started vetting my friends, subtly discouraging me from seeing my old college buddies because they were bad influences, who made me stay out too late or eat too much pizza. I began to feel like a guest in my own home. Everything was curated, labeled, and scheduled. The house was spotless, the fridge was full of kale and probiotics, and my life was running like a Swiss watch. And I was miserable. The most devastating part of the mommy syndrome wasn't the loss of my schedule or my clothes. It was the death of our bedroom. How do you desire someone who tells you when to go to bed? How do you feel passion for someone who inspects your ears to make sure you cleaned them properly? You can't. Intimacy requires two adults, two equals, two people who can surprise each other. But there were no surprises in our house. There was only compliance. Sarah would come to bed, smelling of expensive night cream, and she'd check her watch. "We have an hour before we need to sleep to get our full 8 hours, Julian. Do you want to? You know." The way she said it, like it was another item on her to-do list, somewhere between laundry and checking the smoke detectors, made my blood turn to ice. I'd look at her, and I wouldn't see my lover. I'd see a supervisor. I'd see the person who had spent the last 14 hours telling me what to eat, what to wear, and what to think. I'm tired, Sarah, I'd say, turning away. Let's just sleep. I could feel her confusion. In her mind, she was the perfect wife. She did everything for me. She was devoted. She didn't understand that her devotion was actually a form of soft tyranny. She thought that by removing every obstacle from my life, she was proving her love. She didn't realize she was removing the man from the marriage. The tension reached a boiling point during the summer of 2025. I had been asked to design a massive public park downtown. It was the project of a lifetime. I was inspired, I was working late, and for the first time in years, I felt like a leader. I felt powerful, but back at home, Sarah was treating the project like a science fair assignment. She started researching plant species for me. She'd leave articles on my desk about urban drainage systems. She even called my assistant one day to check on my caloric intake, because she was worried I wasn't eating enough protein during my long shifts. I came home that night, and the house felt like a cage. I walked into the kitchen, and Sarah was there, hovering over a bowl of salad. Julian, I saw your sketches on the counter. I think you're using too much concrete in the south quadrant. I printed out some alternatives that are more eco-friendly. Also, I called your boss and told him you'd need the weekend off because we're going to that wellness retreat I booked. I stood there, my boots still covered in the mud of the site where I had been commanding a crew of 50 men. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. You called my boss? I asked, my voice dangerously low. I was just worried, honey. You've been so stressed, and I thought a retreat would. Sarah, stop. I'm just trying to help. Julian, why are you being so defensive? I do everything for you. I manage this entire house. I manage your health. I manage your. Exactly, I snapped. You manage me. You don't love me, Sarah. You manage me like I'm a project. Like I'm a child who can't be trusted to cross the street without holding your hand. She looked at me, her eyes filling with tears of noble hurt. How can you say that? I've sacrificed so much to make sure you're happy. I'm not happy, I yelled. I'm suffocating. I don't want a manager. I don't want a life coach. I want a wife. I want a woman who looks at me and sees a man, not a problem to be solved. That night, for the first time, I didn't sleep on the bed. I didn't even sleep on the couch. I stayed in my studio, surrounded by my drawings, the only place where I was still the one in charge. The next morning, I woke up to a gentle knock on the door. It was Sarah. She was holding a green smoothie and a schedule for the day. I know you were upset last night, Julian. It's probably just your blood sugar. Drink this, and I've pushed the retreat back by 2 hours so you can finish your drawings. I've also organized your colored pencils by shade so you can work faster. I looked at the green smoothie. I looked at the neatly organized pencils. And I realized that she hadn't heard a single word I'd said. To her, my outburst wasn't a cry for freedom. It was just another symptom she needed to manage. That was the moment I knew. I couldn't fight her anymore, because you can't fight benevolence. You can only escape it. I drank the smoothie in silence. I followed the schedule. I went to the retreat. I played the part of the managed husband for one more weekend. But while I was sitting in that meditation hall, listening to a guru talk about inner peace, I was actually planning my exit strategy. I started looking for an apartment. Not a managed apartment in a gated community, but a raw, messy loft in the industrial district. I started putting money into a separate account. And most importantly, I started talking to a woman named Maya. Maya was a contractor on my park project. She was messy. She swore. She ate cheeseburgers for lunch. And when she looked at me, she didn't see a project. She saw a man who knew how to build beautiful things. One afternoon, we were standing on the dirt of the south quadrant, looking at the concrete Sarah had told me to remove. What are you thinking, Julian? Maya asked, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of a dirty glove. I'm thinking about keeping the concrete, I said. Maya grinned. Good. It looks strong. It looks like it can hold a lot of weight. I looked at her, and for the first time in years, I felt a spark of something that wasn't compliance. It was the feeling of being an adult. I went home that night, and Sarah was waiting for me with a plate of steamed fish and a list of relationship goals she had written out for us to discuss. "Julian, I've been thinking about our communication. I've developed a 3-step plan for us to use when we're feeling activated, like you were the other night. Step 1 is..." I didn't let her finish. I went to the bedroom, pulled out the charcoal gray suit she had picked for me, and laid it on the bed. "Sarah," I said. "Yes, honey, I'm not wearing this tomorrow." She laughed, that small, indulgent motherly laugh. "Oh Julian, don't be silly. You have that presentation. You need to look your best. I've already steamed it." I looked at her, and the cliffhanger was there, hanging in the air between us like a guillotine. "I'm not wearing the suit, Sarah. And I'm not going to the presentation. In fact, there are a lot of things I'm not going to do anymore." The look on Sarah's face wasn't anger. It was that terrifyingly calm, parental patience. She looked at me as if I were a teenager going through a rebellious phase that she just needed to weather until I came to my senses. She didn't realize that the man she was trying to weather was already halfway out the door. "Julian, you're clearly overwhelmed," she said, her voice smooth and devoid of any real edge. "I'll cancel your meetings for tomorrow. We'll take a mental health day. I'll make those green juices you like, and we can go over the relationship goals list when you're feeling more regulated." "Regulated," I repeated. The word felt like a slap. "I'm not a thermostat, Sarah. And I don't want your juice. I want my life back." I walked past her and started throwing things into a duffel bag. Not the clothes she had bought for me. Not the organic cotton shirts she had picked to match her own wardrobe. I grabbed my old flannels, my worn-out work boots, and my sketching kit. I was stripped back to the essentials. "Julian, what are you doing? You're acting erratic. Do I need to call someone?" I stopped and looked her dead in the eyes. "That's the problem, Sarah. Every time I express an emotion that isn't on your approved schedule, you treat it like a medical emergency. You've managed the pulse right out of this marriage. I can't breathe in here. Every time I look at you, I don't see a wife. I see a supervisor. I see a mother, and I can't sleep with my mother." She recoiled as if I'd struck her. The noble mask finally slipped, revealing a raw, jagged hurt underneath. "I did everything for you. I made you successful. I kept your life together when you were too scattered to do it yourself. You think you'd be the lead architect on that park without the discipline I gave you?" "Maybe not," I said, zipping the bag. "Maybe I would have failed. Maybe I would have been messy. But at least I would have been the one doing it. I'd rather be a successful man who made his own mistakes than a puppet who never trips because someone else is pulling the strings. You didn't give me discipline, Sarah. You gave me a cage and called it a home." I walked out that night. I didn't go to a hotel. I went straight to the park site. I sat on a pile of lumber in the middle of the south quadrant, under the moonlight, and I breathed. It was the first time in 5 years that no one knew where I was, what I was eating, or what time I was going to bed. The air felt different. It tasted like autonomy. The weeks that followed were a brutal lesson in the mommy syndrome fallout. Sarah didn't send angry texts. She sent helpful ones. "I've forwarded your mail to your office so you don't lose anything. I've paid the insurance on your car so it doesn't lapse. I've scheduled a therapy session for us on Tuesday at 4 p.m. I'll send the Zoom link." Every message was a reminder of why I left. She was still trying to manage my exit. She couldn't accept a reality she didn't control. I spent more and more time with Maya. It wasn't just about the physical attraction, though that was there, raw and adult. It was about the way she treated me. One night, we were at a dive bar after a long day of pouring concrete. I accidentally knocked over my beer. I instinctively waited for the lecture. "Julian, you're so clumsy, let me get a cloth. You should really watch your elbow placement," speech I'd heard 1,000 times. Maya just laughed, grabbed a handful of napkins, and shoved them at me. "Clean that up, architect. You're making a mess of my favorite table." I cleaned it up. I did it myself. And I felt a surge of pride that was completely absurd for someone my age. I was an adult taking responsibility for a small mess. No one handled it for me. No one used it as a teaching moment. I was just a guy who spilled a beer. "You okay?" Maya asked, sensing the shift in my energy. "Yeah," I said, looking at her. She had a streak of dirt on her cheek and her hair was a mess. She was beautiful because she was real. She didn't want to fix me. She didn't want to optimize me. She just wanted to be with me. I'm better than I've been in a long time. The final confrontation happened when I went back to the house to sign the separation papers. Sarah had organized the meeting like a board presentation. She had snacks laid out, healthy, low-sodium snacks, and the papers were neatly tabbed in a color-coded folder. "I've worked out the asset distribution to be as fair as possible, Julian. I've accounted for your future taxes and the maintenance on the studio. If you just sign here, everything will be taken care of for you." I looked at the folder. I looked at the relationship goals list that was still pinned to the fridge, now looking like a relic from a dead civilization. "No," I said. "No, Julian, I've spent 10 hours on this. It's the most efficient way." "I don't want efficient, Sarah. I want my lawyer to look at it. I want to make my own decisions, even if they're less efficient. I'm done being taken care of." She broke then. The composure, the management, the project manager persona, it all evaporated. She slumped into one of the kitchen chairs and sobbed. Not the manipulative cry of a victim, but the hollow cry of someone who realized they had built a perfect machine that no one wanted to use. "I only wanted you to be the best version of yourself," she choked out. "But it wasn't my version, Sarah. It was yours. You fell in love with a man you thought was a fixer-upper. But you didn't just fix the plumbing. You tore down the walls until there was no house left to live in. You loved the version of me that obeyed you. But you can't be in a relationship with someone you don't respect as an equal." I left the folder on the table and walked out. A year later, the park was finished. It was a success, my success. It wasn't eco-friendly in the way Sarah would have wanted. It was raw, it was bold, and it had a lot of concrete. On the day of the opening, I stood in the center of the south quadrant. Maya was there, standing next to me. She didn't tell me to fix my tie. She didn't remind me to stand up straight. She just held my hand and said, "You did this. It's yours." I sometimes see Sarah's social media. She's with someone new now. A younger guy, someone who looks like he needs a lot of guidance. She's posting about his transformation and how she's helping him launch a new business. I feel a twinge of pity for him, but mostly, I feel relief. I realized that the mommy syndrome is a trap for both people. The woman loses her femininity by becoming a drill sergeant, and the man loses his masculinity by becoming a recruit. It's a death spiral of resentment disguised as care. I'm back to being a man who forgets his keys sometimes. I eat pizza for breakfast if I feel like it. I wear the wrong socks. And I've never been happier. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather be a messy adult than a perfect child. Wow, that was something, wasn't it? I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm still processing some parts, so let's talk about it in the comments. I'll be down there waiting for your thoughts. Don't forget to like and share if you had a good time with me. See you in the next one.